My name is Lori Carey, and the founder of We Connect the Dots, and this is our mentor training session for the Codathon. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules, and also for supporting our program by volunteering to support us and teach students how to code. We're going to start this conversation really, and I want to make sure it's an open conversation. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question or put something in the chat session. We'll be monitoring the chat session as well to see if anybody has questions there, or if they have issues with their mic and can't speak and they want to type in there, feel free to do that. We should be go about an hour. We won't probably go more than an hour, so just to set everyone's expectations. The agenda tonight is really to introduce us and introduce you to our organization and this program, and explain what a mentor is, at least our definition of a mentor, and then review some of the content, and then wrap up and have questions. Okay, so with that, we'll get started about the mentor. And really what we're trying to do here is teach kids the things highlighted on the right. On the left-hand side, college readiness is where those academic pieces are focused on. But reality today, there's a lot of information out there for students to access on the internet, and these skills on the right are really critical. These are the skills that employers are looking for today. And learning to code teaches a lot of these skills. And so how our program is really set up is to ensure that the kids all have an opportunity to understand what synthesizing information is, what are problem-solving skills, how do I think critically, and what does that mean? And then having really good communication skills and being able to work collaboratively in a team of students. So they'll be working in teams of 4. Each site will have different head counts. I think at Darby we have about 50 students, and same in Westbury, a little over 50 students. And then in Ohio, we've got about half that, about 25 students, and this is their first year doing this. So they're going to start this off with a good success and have a lower count that they can manage with, and then grow from there. And so Darby, this is the 3rd year doing this program in Darby, and the 3rd year doing this in Westbury. So we're excited to continue and to see this growth happen. And again, I want to stress that it's really important that we're teaching these kids to think on their own. So a mentor will be a little different in our definition than a typical mentor. So we want kids to really learn how to learn independently. And we do that by making sure, first and foremost, as a mentor, you're going to really directing students through questioning. So it's inquiry-based learning, helping them by questioning them of where they might find resources, who have they asked so far. Their first resource should always be their team members. We want to encourage that at all times. But initially they may feel uncomfortable with their teams yet. So on Friday night, there may be more likeliness for them to want to ask others. So we'll support that. But as they move into the weekend, we want to really make sure that they're reaching out to their teams first before they reach out to someone else. Because in most cases, someone on the team knows the answer or knows where to find the answer. If they're unsure, the student should try to use an online resource, and that's encouraged in the groups, and that's your role as a mentor to really kind of ask them, hey, did you ask one of your team members first? If they did and they don't know the answer, okay, hey, let me share with you some resources that you might look for, right? And how you might find them online. If that doesn't work and they still don't have the information, then the student can be sent to a person on the site that knows the information. There's going to be a lot of industry experts there, so don't feel like as a mentor that you need to know this information. We're just sharing with you the content and everything, and if you have skills, fantastic. It'll be more valuable to you. If you don't, you're going to learn a lot and have a good time. And so the person in the room that may have the answer may be you. So mentors should direct students logistical questions to the resource that is most effective in answering their question, right? Whether that is another team member or a person on site. Again, kind of the same thing we said in the last slide, but just really kind of reaffirming that they really should make sure that they talk to the members of the team and people on site for questions that they need, for any kind of questions about what they're using, the software, and things like that. Mentors should try to lead idea discussions to a place that is optimal and encourages the students' ideas. We don't, mentors should not suggest their own ideas or shoot down a student's ideas. That's really important. You can influence a student by giving them an idea, and we want to make sure that the idea comes from within. And so we're going to do a lot of activities during the program to help support that. and the teams will have plenty of opportunities to kind of brainstorm together and whiteboard or do some mind mapping on how to come up with some ideas. And then again, it's important that every idea is a valid idea because it maybe just hasn't had time to be nurtured enough to be a good idea. Again, the mentor should ensure that students are doing something that teaches them relevant subjects. So in this case, though, some students may already have some of that knowledge already, right? So if they already understand the material and the context that we're referring to, we let them to move on to more advanced subjects if they want to. But reality is, as long as they're not disturbing anyone else and they're not distracting anyone else, it's totally okay. This is a free learning environment, meaning that it's open, everybody's learning together, and we want to encourage students to kind of explore and go advance on from what they've already learned. And you're going to have various levels in here. You're going to have some kids coming into this program who've never coded at all, like 0 lines of code. And then you're going to have other students who've done a little bit of code. And then you're going to have some that are more advanced. We have repeat students from last year. We have students from 2 years ago. So these kids are coming back. Those students will have a more advanced curriculum, which I'll talk to at the end. But these students coming in for the first time are required to take the HTML training. We've built in scaffolding for the students so that if they come back their second year, they'll have an opportunity to continue that learning in some more advanced web development. Students should really, or mentors should really keep the students in a comfortable social place that encourages them to work with their team members and keep students motivated to work during their project time. So your job as a mentor is kind of rallying the troops, quarterback, making sure the team is executing and getting things done. And do they look confused? Do they need some help? How can we support them? What are the challenges? Just kind of really being an observer and a coach for them to ensure their success. The mentor should also keep students from, we don't want to force students to do work that they don't feel like they're interested in. So if they seem like they're not interested, certainly, and they're disruptive, then you'll bring that to one of our site leads' attentions, and you'll know those people in the room. They'll be introduced to you when you first arrive as a mentor. So if a student, again, we've never had it happen, but there's always a first time that a student's like maybe feeling that they're too advanced and they're bored and they're being disruptive, then we'll have a conversation with them and put them on the right path. But we don't want to, of course, force students to work. If they choose, for example, their teams are kind of hanging out, and you'll see this, 2 teams will kind of work at the same table together and they'll start to bond as a big group. And that's fine. So we encourage them to go wherever they'd like to, but we want to, again, encourage them to stay within their teams, but we're not forcing them to sit any particular place. The students will all be part of what's called a Yammer. Anybody on the call here familiar with Yammer? Besides my CAP students?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So all the students will be in this. It's a private community. We'll be inviting the mentors in to this community as well. And this is it was about almost 1,300 entities in this community, industry experts, teachers, and students. And it provides us a way to have analytics, to let them collaborate, learning these types of collaboration tools. And it's a safe place for them to ask questions and to interact with their teams. So on to the training content. And I don't see Rafi's joined yet. So he had a little crisis this evening, so we're going to hope that he joins. If not, we're going to go without him. So Rafi is one of our community ambassador students who actually developed this curriculum and who will be leading the content in Westbury. In Darby, Vincent Oshigrosho, it will be is one of our CAP students. He'll be leading the content there with some support from other industry experts that are coming in to support that site. And then in Darby, we have Chris, and I can't remember Chris's last name, who will be leading the content there with support from some other entities as well. And then we also have some Microsoft and Adobe resources that are coming in to support the advanced student development curriculum. And again, we'll have a representative for that content in both Darby and Westbury. This year in Ohio, because it's their first year, they don't have repeat students, so they'll be doing that next year. Any questions before I get into the training content? Okay. All right. So this is, what I've done here is really just taken all of the content that we have and put it into slides. So you can see this now. Yeah. Yes, go ahead. Did somebody have a question? No? Okay. So what we've done here is put this into a slide deck. You'll have access to this content as well. You are not expected to teach this. There will be people there teaching this content. You're there to support the teams and to learn with them and to help support their success. Okay? So this is really, the structure is going to be up in front of the room. We do a very collaborative space, so it's not like they're sitting in lines. They're sitting at tables, they're sitting on the floor, they're sitting wherever they feel most comfortable and can see the screen and can participate. Some kids will have Windows devices, some will have Chromebooks, some will have Linux devices. So we have a various, very different platforms, which is great to have that diverse technology in the room. This is all browser based, so there's nothing that they need to install on their computers, so they should be able to do this successfully. The instructor is going to start off in CodePen. How many here on the call are familiar with CodePen? Anyone? I will send you some links afterwards where you can explore that, and there's some videos that you can watch, and we have a bunch of videos that we'll send you links to after this call that you can watch. And again, you don't have to, but if you have time and you're one of those people who likes to really feel like you have everything and know the information, then certainly go ahead and do that, but don't feel obligated to do that. It's all about us, really supporting the students' success and just being there to make sure that they have a good time and that they're learning. So they'll start off and it'll be in live. They'll be actually going through this content live in CodePen. We're not going to be using PowerPoints, even though we are tonight. This will be done in an actual on-screen with CodePen, and they'll be in CodePen as well, kind of following along. And there'll be moments in time where they'll be going off and watching videos, so we're encouraging them, reminding them to bring headsets, and then they'll have an opportunity to kind of replay. Some students may need to. They need to say, hey, I really didn't understand that concept. I want to watch that video again, right? We want to encourage that and that collaboration between the teams teaching each other. You're going to see groups of students where the student in the team, and we create the team so that we have, just so you're aware, we use an algorithm to define the teams. So the teams are in groups of 4, and they're half boys, half girls. Their ages 13 to 18, so we split the group so there's a good spread and there's not just a bunch of 13-year-olds on one group. We know that when we put a bunch of 13-year-olds in the room together, they act like 13-year-olds, but when you put that in with 18-year-olds, there's a whole different environment that plays out, which is really important. The 18-year-olds become leaders, the 13-year-olds really look up to the older kids and look for support. Sometimes I find the 13-year-olds are teaching the 18-year-olds. It's all over the map, and it's exciting to see. So our flow for tonight's going to be covering sorry, I didn't finish the context. Sorry. So the groups are also split up by interests and capabilities. So we do 2 different questions 2 questions we ask them, and we have them rate them. So the first one is your coding skills. So it's like none, never coded before, have a little bit of experience, or I have lots of experience and want to learn more. And then there's the artistic capabilities. We've also looked for, do you have graphic design experience? And same thing, none, little bit, lots of experience, looking to learn more, because creating websites requires both an analytical mind and a creative mind, right? So it's that coding skills and the imagination and the design thinking to be able to do that, to pull together a really phenomenal result or product. And so by blending the students and the teams to make sure we have a little bit of kids who can code and not code, and that way we don't have teams that are all kids who know how to code and teams who don't know how to code, so that we don't have, it's just not fair for some teams then, right? So we want to make sure everybody's kind of learning together. So the flow is going to be HTML, CSS, and then we'll go into a little bit of JavaScript. And keeping in mind that we're really just doing an introduction to JavaScript, we're not getting into any real depth with that in this beginner first year students. So the instructor begins with basics tag syntax, in HTML. We go through this. He'll cover some of the close tag, hello world, and really kind of getting them to see what happens when they create a really short snippet of code and what these tags will do. And then they'll see that on the screen. It'll be really straightforward and easy for them to participate and do it while the instructor's doing it in CodePen. They'll get into some more tags, header tags, and of course bolding and italics and underlining and all the tags that they'll need to kind of bring their code to life. And then of course they're going to get into some additional tags regarding elements, and we've got some syntax here that they'll go through, and we'll show them a little snippet of what it might look like in this example. And again, they'll have a chance to see this in CodePen. What's nice about CodePen, if you're not familiar with it, it has the ability to see the code on one side and then actually see what the page looks like on the other. So they can, as they're typing their code, they can see what it's going to look like on their website. Next, they'll get into talking about titles of their page, and again, what the syntax would look like for that. And then there's a comment here that this doesn't show up in CodePen, but we recommend that they use it anyways. So that's just a comment there for them, for the students. We get into a little bit of break tags, and again, some more examples of how they might write some context. And, Rafi brings a lot of his humor to some of this. You'll see that further on as we get into more details of this. Just wanted students to kind of have some fun with this. They might change the context of what's in there. It's totally okay. We're just kind of giving them some examples of how these tags work and the impact in your writing when you use them. Any questions so far? Silence. I'll assume silence is we're good. So at this point, the students will get 5 to 10 minutes to try to design a personal resume using the tags that they've just learned, right? And this won't go towards anything, just a little really quick exercise for writing HTML code and helping everyone who doesn't understand, right? So we want to encourage students not to delete their resumes because we're going to use them again later on. So we want to keep the context there. So just remind them of that, that they'll want to keep the content that they've created because we're going to add on to it. We're going to keep moving with this and keep adding on some of this. And what will happen if they do delete it is they're going to go, oh no, then and then they're going to have to go, they'll lose time, they'll get out of sync with everybody else. And so, we want to make sure that we're kind of moving the pace because if we have 48 hours, it's not a lot of time. We have a lot of activities to do to get them kind of bonded and gelled together. And then this training takes place. So we want to make sure that they're not losing time in any way. All right. And then again, the instructor is going to start to introduce the idea of tag attributes and what those tag attributes will do. And then we'll get into, again, some more references here and specify more information on the tags. And the instructor will start to get into new tags that use tag attributes. And again, all the reference information will be up on the screen for them, and they'll start to follow along. Cover some input and how this works for them. Some iframe context here and some examples of what that might look like and what an iframe is and how it would be used. This is usually a really important one for kids because they want to display videos and stuff on their website. So this is very much in their world, and so understanding how this is all displayed on a website is really important for them. And then, of course, showing them how to do some generate tags from a YouTube through these steps. They'll know how to do that. Then we're going to get into really what a document is structured and what it looks like, so they can kind of see a real flowing document within a website and how it might be, how it's going to look. So they will, and again, this is at a high level. That's why this first piece we'll start with. And then we'll get into some further, concepts of this and dividing up the, using divider tags so that you can kind of start to break up your content in this document and get into a more detailed document. And so that they can start to see how this, again, there's some scaffolding and how it continues to evolve. And this is just another example of content within here, and then the closing of the document. So now, from this point, you can see that divided the websites up to photos and fanfic sections. This is kind of where we're going, kind of taking them next. And this will help us later when using CSS and JavaScript, as well as dividing up the work. So they will divide up the work. Some students will work on the CSS, some will work on the HTML, some will be doing research, some will be doing the JavaScript. They're going to divide and conquer. That's how they will be successful, and we will encourage that. And they'll decide amongst themselves how they're going to do that based on interest, skills, what they want to learn. And as a mentor, you want to encourage them to take on something that they don't know, so that they're not necessarily doing what they already know, right? So we want to encourage that. And Pastebin is a reference that Rafi included in here. I'm just going to click on this link, and I'm not sure whether you guys will see it based on how I'm sharing here, but let's see what happens. No, it's not going to let me. So we'll just keep going on here. And then, of course, they'll get into how to do multiple pages. And we have to make sure that they understand how to do that in CodePen especially, as well as in a traditional website. Again, CodePen is a tool that's used for basic beginning learning website development. We use it because we find it's really easy for the kids to work in, to feel comfortable in, and that they can show it afterwards and in their presentations at the end of the program on Sunday. The instructor will get into some helpful references of where students can go and where they can learn some of these concepts that they've already learned in more detail, and then of course learn other more advanced pieces too. And we'll go through some of these resources, and certainly if you have resources when you're working with the students that you think are really valuable to them, don't hesitate to say, hey, I know this really cool site that you can go check this stuff out. This might be something that you want. And then what I encourage you to do is to post it in Yammer, so that if it's not included in some of the things that we're doing, we'll encourage you to post that kind of stuff in Yammer and start a thread on it, so the students and the other teams and the other sites can take advantage of that as well. I'm going to pause there for a second and just see what questions we have. Okay, silence is no question.
Question.
Yes.
Do the student need to work on the specific project, or is going to be to the choice to decide whatever they want to work on it?
Yeah, great question. And we kind of covered this on the orientation video or the call, but I'll kind of revisit it now. It's just for those who maybe didn't do the orientation call. So this program is designed where these kids come in teams of 4. Again, as I mentioned, they don't select their teams. They come in not knowing each other. They'll start off with doing some mind mapping activities. If you're familiar with mind mapping, it's a great way to kind of get kids introducing themselves in a very visual way and learning about each other and about their values. And so they'll share what's important to them, what do they value, what do they value in working together in teams. And through those conversations and activities, they'll start to work together to understand what problem they want to solve. So the rubric that they're going to be using or following for the judging, and the judges will be following, outlines in detail what they have to do. But it is based on, they'll decide what global problem that they want to solve. And you can go to our website and see some of the prior projects, and you can go to our Facebook page and see some of the live videos of the presentations the students have delivered in the past. It's pretty amazing what we see these kids solve, what problems they believe are critical problems in their life that they want to solve for the future. And we give them lots of autonomy to decide, as long as it's, again, for the rubric, for coming in first, second, and third, the bigger the problem you solve, meaning if it's a global problem, you're going to get higher points. If it's a national problem, you're going to get less points. And if you just do a problem that solves it for just one community, the points will be lower. So we want to encourage, this is about encouraging kids to think big, to think global. We live in a global world, and so we want them to start to think about how they might solve worldwide problems. And so again, the kids, as you can imagine, the kids will solve some amazing things. And we've had students, come up with these conceptual ideas that are like, they could be real businesses. So they have to come up with a conceptual business from this problem that they want to solve, and then represent that business in a website. Now, it could be a not-for-profit business or it could be a for-profit business. That's up to them. We talk about that when we do our introduction presentation of what types of problems you might want to solve, and what are some examples of companies who do things like this, who do social good. We want to encourage kids that are entrepreneur to, if they're going to someday start a business, that maybe their business also solves, makes money, but maybe it also has some social good to it as well. This is the kind of culture that we want to encourage with these students, is that social giving back to the community is important, and through this initiative they're learning how to do that. And what we've even seen is some students, some groups and teams will have done a for-profit with a not-for-profit kind of like foundation that they kind of highlight, where they do some for-profit work and then they do some give back, and their give back is through, I'll give you an example. We had one year students did, it was when we were, the big refugee issue and housing them. So they came up with this concept of these temporary housing for the refugees, and then they had for their for-profit, they were doing these like fabricated, quick, easy build homes, and so they had the concept of both, where they would make money and where they would also support and give back. So it was kind of a cool concept that they came up with. So you'll see all kinds of crazy things that they do, and it's always amazing to see what they come up with. And that's why we give them lots of autonomy to do that. And we encourage you to, listen, be very present in your groups when you're working with them, because you'll hear them talking about different things. And what you want to watch for is that one student maybe is dominating the group and pushing their idea, and the other group, this team members, are not so keen on it. Watch for that, because what will happen if that one person is very dominant, meaning they're kind of forcing the issue, they'll end up picking that project or that problem to solve, and the other students won't be engaged. And then they won't have a successful project because it's one person's idea. So we want to encourage that everybody believes that this is the right idea to do, and that's the direction that they want to take. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So on to CSS.
I got a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
What would be the required or recommended web browser, since all this software is a web browser based software?
If they're on Chromebooks, they're going to use Chrome. If they're on Windows devices, they can use Chrome, or they can use, I'm not sure, Chris, this would be a good question for Chris and Rafi, and I can certainly get back to you on it. But I think that in most cases, Chrome is probably the preferred one. I don't see a lot of kids using Edge or IE, but I have seen them using other ones, Firefox and, others as well.
Gotcha, thanks.
Okay. So when we go on, so when we start with the CSS, this is about, we're starting to get into cascading style sheets, right, and the syntax for that. And again, it assumes that the kids have at least, kind of walked through the HTML introduction, that they're going to have access to that in the notebook, and they have, they're starting this CodePen project, and they have stuff that wasn't deleted, right? Because now we're going to have some scaffolding here and add on. And so now when we start to layer in the CSS, we'll talk to them about, what is CSS? What's the importance of it? It's about making your website look better, right? Allows you to change what it looks like so that it's pleasing. We'll talk about usability in websites, and that's part of the rubric when we review the rubric. The judges are going to be looking for that. Is your website, user-friendly? And so CSS will help the kids get to that point where they'll be able to do that. All right, and so we get into, again, I'm not going to get into all of this detail. I'm just kind of showing you so you can see some of the context of what we'll be sharing with them, and how they can start to learn some of the CSS concepts and defining the page and document, and really kind of outlining and looking at different ways to change colors, fonts, and all of that. We'll break down the text and explain how it's structured. That's really important for students to understand when they look at something like this and they're looking at the screen. That's why, CodePen is so valuable, because when they look at the context and they change something and then they look to the other side and they see what it looks like, they're like, wow, if I do this, this happens, right? So they need to see cause and effect. And by doing cause and effect, they're learning. And a lot of times we'll encourage them to take, existing HTML and drop it in and see what it looks like. Pick it apart. It's kind of like, opening the hood of a car and taking all the engine apart, right? To see how it works. Those doing those kind of activities are really important in the learning experience. So again, just kind of getting into more of the resources and references they can go to learn more. And then getting into the RGB codes. This is always a good one. A lot of kids don't understand what RGB is. And so once they do, they go, oh, I've seen that lots of times. I never knew what that was, right? And the kids that are from the graphic design and the art world, they're like, oh, I totally know what that is. So, it all depends on their background and what they've been exposed to. Some kids will know and some kids will have a sense of it or have seen it before, but never really, played with it and understand how it can change and what its role plays in the internet and the visual aspects of a website. Okay, and then we'll get into hex too as well, because that's also plays a role here in defining colors as well. Okay, then we'll get into some more overviews of basic fonts and all the different fonts that you can see in a Word, but in different browsers and how they represent the different fonts. And so they'll get into font names, font families. We'll talk about serif and non-serif, so they'll get a better understanding of this. And again, those students who are from the world, all the kids who are like the artistic design kids who are maybe using Adobe products or are really kind of passionate about this will have a better foundation and an interest in learning more about this, which is kind of exciting to see. But we want to again encourage kids who haven't had that exposure to kind of learn and explore too. So as they divide and conquer, as a mentor, you're going to watch for that. Make sure that the kids are all getting a chance to learn, and you're going to watch for somebody maybe feeling like out group versus in group. And what you can do to help them is to kind of bring them in, start to have a conversation and call them out. Like, for example, if there's 4 kids on the team and you've got 3 that are kind of working together and Joe's not, right? And so you can start to bring them in and say, hey, Joe, what do you think about this? And get Joe talking so the other students can hear he has a voice or she has a voice if it's Sue, whatever it may be. Just kind of watch for that. And just for awareness, our teams are always designed with at least 2 girls on every team. Or 2 boys. So we will never we might have a group that's all boys, or a group that's all girls, depending on the dynamics of who has registered and who's attending, but we will try as our best, unless we kind of have a conversation with the student and they're okay with it, which we've had, where we won't put 1 girl or 1 boy on a team with the opposite gender, okay? We want to make sure there's a whole dynamic of in-group there, because that's part of the learning experience and the neuroscience behind that is we want them to feel good about what they're doing and not feel uncomfortable, because then they won't be learning, they'll be shutting down.
If there's a group of students in the overall location that is not divisible by 4, do you guys go a little bit higher with the individual group amount, or do you guys go lower with the amount of students in each group?
Great question, Doug, and it varies. Sometimes we'll go 5, sometimes we'll go 3. It depends on what we see the skills in the team and the dynamics of the team. And what we do too, Doug, is Friday night, the mentors that are there, we're going to watch for this as well. So that's part of your role. If you're a teacher, you'll have a good, or if you're a manager, you'll have some of that background experience to watch for those personality challenges. What you don't want to have is a team that's butting heads, for example. They're too rowdy, they're all rambunctious, or they're too quiet, and nobody's talking to each other. And so what we do is we look for that in the first few hours of the program, and we try to, by Friday night, make that switch. So that if we feel like we need to kind of juggle a few students around, we tell them that too when they come in. Hey, these are the teams you're in. We might change you during the evening tonight, but you'll be locked in by the end of the evening going into Saturday morning. So Doug, you'll have that opportunity to make adjustments if you think you need to. And it really goes by observation, gut instinct, having a conversation with the students, and asking permission to do that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, so we go on to a little bit more of the index file and editing it and editing the contents, and then they'll talk about, again, going back to the CSS document, changing some pieces in here and showing them what happens when you do this, so they can kind of see, again, it's cause and effect. And it continues on. They'll get into some more tags and using commas, and they'll have some examples that they'll go through. Students will have, again, another 5 to 10 minutes to create a website for a popsicle stand of their own design. In this case, we're kind of giving them guidance and telling them what to do because it's part of the learning session. But when they're finished with the learning session, they start working on their projects, that'll be all theirs. Okay? So again, as they're doing these activities, there may be, specific things we're asking them to do. They can always deviate, though, if they want to kind of go off script a little bit, they can. And then on to JavaScript. So in this point, there's an assumption that students have learned the content of the HTML and CSS introductions. They're feeling pretty simple. Everything's pretty similar as far as the features here, so they're kind of feeling comfortable. And it's also assumed that that they've had at least some basic understanding of the object-oriented programming language. So most likely either Java or Python. Some of the students may, some of the students may not. But this is we'll relate it back to them so they can see and understand that the syntax is similar, and the ideas are in line and similar. So this the session is not as much a JS for beginners as it is a JS for programmers. So the students should have also cleared out all the code from their previous session, as it will not be used in this next piece. So they'll start with a blank code pen project. And then we'll go on to explaining what's written in there, and there'll be some things on the screen that the instructor will be sharing with them, talking about for loops and that, and then they'll start to implement a separate JS file into their HTML and move on from there. And then they'll get some examples so the students should know how to set up the basic HTML. So this is kind of like, okay, let's start here. And then they'll kind of add on to this and start to get into the JavaScript components of it, and getting into some of the specifics on elements and how the syntax works in JavaScript. The students should run their code and then see the words "Hello World" when they finish this activity, and then they'll explain what happens in each line, so they'll kind of go through it all. Again, we want to really go through each line to make sure the students truly understand what they typed, what happened, and what does it all mean. I'll get into some more JS handles and variables and things like that, so they understand the concepts of what these are and what they do and how they impact the code. We'll go through some conditionals and talk about that, and get into the if-then statements, if-else statements, loops, and continue through to get into some functions and what a function is. And then they'll start to go through a review and some examples again of what these would look like. And they'll be doing this following along, so they'll see it on their screen as well. And so now at this point, the students should be given another 15 minutes to work collaboratively on creating a fraction class with the ability to reduce itself. It should take a numerator and denominator and be able to output itself through a toString as a reduced number. So this is going to be the activity that they're going to do, and they can work collaboratively on this to kind of work to design this. It could be done on one person's screen. They could all do it together on their own. We just let them kind of do whatever they're most comfortable with, or they think that they want to, the best way for them to learn this and to do it. And this is the kind of the starting of getting them to the concept of working together. And then we'll get into DOMs and what are document object model, and then again continuing on through the JavaScript concepts and more advanced concepts. Okay, and that's it for the slide deck for now. And it's about 8:45. What I wanted to do was kind of walk you guys through the agenda. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing for a second here, and I'm gonna bring it up, and then I'll start sharing again. So just bear with me. So this is a sway, and it's designed to really, all the students have access to this, and it's on our website, and they can basically go through this and kind of get ready for the Codathon. So I'm going to walk you guys through it. And it just, starts off kind of welcoming them, congratulating them, and just talking a little bit about the program. And then they get into their to-do list. And here's the things they have to do to get ready, and creating their accounts and getting into Yammer. And then we have an assessment. All of the students take a pre-assessment for the program. And oops, I want to bring it so it's there. There we go. So each site has its own assessment that they'll take. And the assessment is really, we do scientific research on whether our programs are impacting students' thinking. And we do it on a few pillars, and it's really determination, persistence. So if you're familiar with the grit scale, we're measuring for that. We're measuring self-confidence. So are they more confident now after participating in the program? And then, of course, their 21st century workforce skills and how they've improved through our programs. And so these are metriced in some questions that they'll answer as part of this assessment. And then on Sunday afternoon, when they finish uploading their projects, they'll complete a post-assessment, which will have some additional questions, but it will have the same answer the first time through. And those questions will compare the difference before and after and look to see how we've changed their thinking. And our goal long term as an organization is to look to see whether informal learning like this impacts the students' path for going into kind of STEM or STEAM type careers, or even just successful careers in their future. Any questions so far? So this is just a shot of the kids doing their tower building activity. It's a fun activity. That happens on Friday night. It's one of our first team building activities to make sure the kids are kind of getting to learn how to work together. And then this is a great example of the question, Doug. So these three students worked together, and it was one girl, two boys. And because we had, this was like our, and they worked great together. And I had the conversation with the young lady, and she was totally fine working with guys. So by herself. So they did well. Okay, so let's see. This just talks about the teams and the importance of the teams, so they understand that and why they're putting into a team and how they get chosen into the teams. And then when should I arrive? Kind of the time frame. What should I bring? It talks about all the things that they're going to bring with them. And then what not to bring. Of course, we have kind of and they do all have a code of conduct that they sign when they register. And these are the things we're asking them to leave at home. And then we talk a little bit about the Sunday parents for the parent pickup and what time parents should pick their students up. Or if they're coming for their presentations, we're asking them to arrive no later than 1:30, because what we don't want is parents strolling in after 2 o'clock. Because they can be disruptive to the kids that are up there presenting. So we want to have everybody seated and ready to go before that time frame. And I'll ask that, Doug, based on the room that you're in, if you do get parents, what we usually do is we'll close the door and have a volunteer stand outside the door so that if somebody does start to come in, we can stop them and then hold them there until the next group comes up to present. Okay. That way they are not disrupting the students who are up on presenting, and we are streaming it live. Don't want to see people kind of walking across the room in the middle of that. And it is very distracting, as you can imagine. Students are nervous enough.
Gotcha.
So it's important that you kind of find a body to stand out there and make sure that nobody comes in. And then their job is to watch for the break and then let them in when the break happens. Okay, so here's where the agenda starts. So Friday they come in, they check in at 3:30. Between 3:30 and 4, we ask them to be there at the latest by 4 o'clock. They'll go in and start to sit at their tables and kind of hang out. We kind of let them go wherever they want when they first come in, and then there'll be a point where we begin the mind mapping activity where we'll ask them to now go into their teams. We have some local officials that will do some kickoffs at each of the locations, and then at 4:45 I will be doing a live stream across all of the sites, kind of going over the whole program, the learning outcomes, the rubric, and the projects examples and what they'll be doing. And then once that's finished, we'll go into a brief safety overview with the students about, cables on the floor, being safe and respectful of each other, and just kind of talking about safety in general and their behavior online. And then they'll go into their teams and they'll start the mind mapping activity. Right after they do their teams, their introductions to each other, they'll have dinner. We'll encourage them to eat together, but we cannot force that. So just, kind of watch for that. I always say, hey guys, you're going to want to eat with your team members now so you can better get to know them, because you've got a lot of work to do together this weekend. And the more you can chat with them and interact with them, the better. So we'll try to encourage that as much as possible. And then your job is to watch for, where you've got one student sitting by themselves. We don't allow that. And we have a rule: nobody eats alone. And so if you see somebody eating alone, you encourage them to go sit with another group, or you sit with them. If they don't want to go and sit with another group, that's okay, but somebody should be sitting with them. And our mentors and our CAP students will be watching out for that as well. All right, so then we start the training session right around 6:15, where we'll get into, giving them these cheat sheets that they'll use so that they can write down any passwords and user IDs that they need so they don't forget them. That's the biggest challenge we have, is kids just forgetting what password account they created and losing it, and then we lose time with that. So we're trying to learn from prior years and give them a little cheat sheet to follow. And then they'll continue through the learning lesson. We'll split into two groups in Darby and Westbury for the advanced students. And then after about 8:30, we'll be starting the tower building activity, and we'll need the mentors to help in supporting that. Your role in the tower building activity is to not participate. Your role, you're not helping them with the design, you're not helping them with the build, you're just making sure they're all working together and that they're having fun doing it. That's it. So then at 10 o'clock, so after they do the tower building activity, they'll work on their projects and they'll start going through stuff and getting kind of thinking about and brainstorming what they want to do. And then at 10 o'clock, we'll kind of stop everybody and we'll play a game of Kahoot. Anybody familiar with Kahoot? If you're not, kids love it. And when you do it across 3 locations, it's a blast. Because what we do is we have all the kids log in, and we have them use their site code for each of them. So like, for example, they might do SC for like Sandusky County. They'll do Darby, or they'll do W for Westbury. So something short, just so that we know when we're seeing the screen and who the leader is in the is it Darby winning? Is it Westbury winning? Is it Sandusky winning? And so Doug, you can agree on whatever, and Vince will probably help and actually probably create that and say, okay, everybody in Darby's going to use this. Everybody in Sandusky is going to use this, and so they'll do their name, they'll do the site code dash their name that they want to use. And that way, it's important because it gets really heated and competitive. They'll start screaming. They'll start. Some kids will be using 2 devices. It's hysterical. It gets crazy. But it's a great kind of icebreaker for the kids to kind of have fun and get to hear from kids in the other locations and compete with them. And then we do movie time, popcorn kind of environment, and then it's kind of lights out by midnight, or quiet time, we'll call it. Some of the kids will not go to sleep, some will, but we warn them because if they don't get sleep, and just for awareness, at 10 o'clock, the mentors are allowed to stay for that, but then they'll depart after the Kahoot game. The only people that are allowed to stay after the Kahoot game for the overnight are the site leads who have been vetted and fingerprinted, just for awareness. And then the mentors or the CAP students that are there will be staying because they're part of our program and they've been with us forever. So they stay, and the students who participate stay along with the site leads. And next year, Doug, hopefully you'll have some good CAP students from this year. And you'll have one there this year. I should say that. You'll have Vincent with you this year. So then, again, quiet time. And then Saturday morning, they get up bright and early. If you're on an early shift, you can come in and join the morning stretch. Every site does something different. We have a personal trainer who comes into Westbury. His name is Maestro, and he's amazing. And he'll get the kids running around, getting them stretching, getting them just energized for the morning, because they're going to be sitting on computers all day, and we want to get them moving a little bit, right? In Darby, I know they do lots and lots of things. They do yoga or something they're kind of calling yoga, and then of course, Ohio. This is your first year. You'll kind of make your own thing and decide what you want to do there.
We got our CrossFitter coming in.
Oh, excellent. And that's what Maestro is. He's a personal trainer, so he does all that stuff. So perfect. And keep in mind, some kids will participate, some will not. So it's, some will kind of sit off in the corner and watch. Totally okay. We just encourage, and the person doing it will kind of get them moving too. They'll encourage them to get out on the floor and to join in. And then we start the training session bright and early, right at 8:30 sharp. And again, we'll split into the two sessions. They'll get into the HTML, they'll get into CSS, they'll continue HTML because they'll have started it from the night before. And then they'll start to go into CSS, and then they'll do the JavaScript. I don't know why that's not on the screen here, but that should be. And so then lunch. And then after lunch, they'll do they'll get into some of the kids. This is like an optional session. We're going to be broadcasting this live, and if kids want to learn GitHub, they can. This is a great workforce skill for a developer, for the serious student who really wants to, put their work out there for college apps and etc. This is really important to them to learn. So any job out there that you apply for in the developer world, the first thing they're going to ask you is, what's your GitHub account, right? So that we can see your work and your projects. So we want to make sure that we're bringing these industry tools to awareness. For the advanced kids, they're going to be in Darby and Westbury, they're going to be learning React. So they'll learn that tool, which is an industry tool that'll help them be successful with their career paths in this if they choose to. And reality is, some of these kids will come away on Sunday, and I always ask this to the open board, to the open audience of students, how many here loved the experience? And it's okay not to raise your hand if you didn't. How many here want to never be a developer? And you'll get kids who raise their hands. When their parents are in the room, they're afraid to almost raise their hand. And I always talk through that with the parents, because I'll say, hey, parents, not everybody's a web developer. It's okay. But these are great ways to learn to be a good problem solver. And if you have a level of concept of what a developer does and some coding, just some basic coding skills, then you'll be a great project leader. Somebody that kind of is in a consulting role and be able to integrate and talk with the developers, because those roles are needed as well. So there's a lot of opportunities out there for kids who are not necessarily into the coding aspect, but maybe that graphic design stuff is their only interest and they don't want to do the coding stuff. So there's all this, and we're just exposing them and giving the opportunity to experience it, to see what it feels like. So now the last piece is they'll submit their project time for collaboration on Saturday, and then we go into telling them how to submit their projects. We do that via broadcast. We have some guest speakers coming in this year we're excited about. This is a 2-hour activity. It's going to teach kids some digital citizenship and digital literacy, cybersecurity skills, what's a attack vector, what's ransomware, how do you keep yourself safe from these tools, how do you use things like adware, so to protect yourself from pop-up ads and malware tools. And then they're going to do a really fun activity where they have to unlock a box with defining codes, and this is all done inside our Yammer community. So it's very, very cool and exciting. And then they have dinner. They do project time, then they do Kahoot again at 10 o'clock, and we'll see which site wins the second night. It'll get even more competitive. Then we'll have movie and popcorn, and then of course quiet time. Now I'll warn you, Doug, on Saturday night they probably won't sleep much, but you kind of have to put your foot down around 1 or 2 in the morning because it's stressing.
Awesome.
That they've got to get to sleep, otherwise they're not going to be, I had the first year we did this, we were kind of laxed on the sleeping. And remember, these are not college kids, these are high school kids. This is a long day for them. And these kids think that they're invincible and they can stay up all night, but we had a student who had to present the next day and could barely speak because he was so exhausted. So we want to make sure they're sharp and ready to present. And so, some kids will take a nap sometime on Sunday before the presentations. Let them do that. And then Sunday is morning stretch, breakfast, project time again, and then they'll submit their projects. I know, Doug, you're going to shift things around a little bit, but that's totally cool. And then because we've got students in Sandusky that have religious church requirements, so they're going to step out and come back, and then they'll have a brunch, which is great. Again, we want to be aware of every community's needs, and this is great that you're able to kind of meet their needs for their parents and to make sure everybody has a great experience. So at 1 o'clock, we're going to broadcast live the What's Next, and the parents will be there, hopefully, some of them. And we'll talk about the experience. We'll kind of get the students engaged in conversations. We'll talk about other resources and things that they can, where they can go and learn more, and what other programs that we have to offer, and how they can get involved in the CAP program and all of the things that we do, and how to stay connected with us in Yammer and things like that. And then at 2 o'clock, we'll begin the presentations. Now, we may adjust this based on the number of teams we have at different sites. We're going to do the calculations and the math on this and see how it turns out and how much time we're going to give each team to present. And so that may shift, but we hope to be wrapped up by 4 o'clock. We usually run late, just to warn everybody. Sometimes we'll go to almost 4:30, but we'll try to keep things on. It's keeping the teams. We go through this whole process with the teams. We'll say, okay, we have them on Saturday or Sunday morning at breakfast, or Saturday night. You can do it either way. I can't remember whether we did it Saturday night or Sunday morning. We have each team draw a card, and on that card is their number of what order they're going to present in. We give them 5 minutes to negotiate with other teams and swap positions, and then once they have their 5 minutes is up, they have to lock in. And then we take the cards back with the team number on it, and we know who's presenting first, second, third, fourth, and so on. And then we have them all know that they have to be on deck, meaning they have to be up and ready to go. As soon as the first team presents, they'll walk over to the judges table. They'll get feedback from the judges. The judges will ask them a few questions. And then that next team is going up and getting set up and ready to go. And so this is kind of the flow that happens. And then we wrap up. We give prizes away. The judges tally the stuff up. We tell them who the winners are. We kind of do it live on Facebook. We broadcast the winners. And then we say goodbye to everybody and clean up. And I know it's
two questions with that.
Yep.
Is there winners in each location?
Yes.
Okay. And additionally, for the presentations, do each of the students have to be a part of the presentation as far as speaking roles, or can they present with just one main presenter from their team?
Yep. So all 4 of them will be up in front. They have to be. So all the or 5 if you have 5 for some reason, right? So they'll all be up in front of the room. They're required to come up, and they're required to start off by introducing themselves and what role they played. How their presentation goes from that point is up to them. It could be one person speaking the entire time. It could be all 4. It could be 2. They'll have rehearsed it. They'll have kind of practiced it and know who's going to speak, and they'll be ready to do that. But they have to be all up supporting their team. There's nobody in the audience. They're all up in front. And they'll kind of sit to the, kind of stand to the side, on the left side or the right side, based on your room and what the layout is. So they'll be up there while their team members are performing. And what I always tell the students, if you want all 4 team members to present, that's great, but make sure you've practiced it and it's fluent, because they are scored on their presentation skills as well in the rubric. Okay, and then this last piece here on here is the, and I'm going to put this link in the chat session so everybody has it, and I'll send it out as a follow-up as well, so that you can go back and refer to it. But there's links on the bottom here to, so these are all kind of all the videos and things that the students will be using. So if you want to kind of dig into these, feel free, but again, not required. I don't want to scare off any mentors and volunteers by thinking they have to be expert coders. But I always love it because it's a great opportunity for people who don't know how to code, but they want to come and learn, to be learning with the students. And I see a question in there, and it might be a repeat question, but I'll answer it anyways, about the specific topics for health economics. Again, you know, as long as it solves a social, it's something to solve an issue, a problem that they feel is a problem, and you know, and Doug, we'll talk about what things are like not acceptable, and so you can kind of, as you're working with your teams there, it's common sense. That's all I can say. And sometimes the kids will test you, All right, so I think I want to wrap. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I appreciate, again, you all joining us. Hopefully this was valuable to you, that you found it helpful for your becoming a volunteer and mentoring for us.
Thank you very much, Lori.
Okay.
Hi, just before everybody goes, I don't know if you guys noticed that I joined the call.
Hi, Rafi.
I was wondering if you went through the video I left.
No, we did not. I just went through slides, Rafi, and went through all your content.
Okay, fantastic. Were there any major questions that were unresolved?
Nope, we're good. I think it went well, and thank you for joining in. And I know you had some conflicts there, so it's okay. All good.
Okay, fantastic.
Alrighty, so we're gonna and I'll give you the recording, Rafi, so you can watch, and if there's things that you want to make sure that I didn't cover that you want to send out, we can do that, okay?
Okay, I'm sure it'll be fine.
All right, guys, everybody have a great night, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.